Welcome to the 2015 Arkansas Boys State Hall of Fame induction ceremony. In the year 2000, the Boys State Commission, along with Mr. Austin Hanner, created the Arkansas Boys State Hall of Fame. Since its inception, over 60 men have been inducted into the Hall of Fame. We honor those individuals who have contributed greatly to Arkansas Boys State and the youth of Arkansas. A former Boys Stater who has achieved excellence in their profession, and former Arkansas Boys State citizens who gave their lives in service to our country. On behalf of the Boys State staff, we appreciate everyone that is in attendance. We are here to honor a 1963 Arkansas Boys State delegate who has achieved excellence in his profession. William Jefferson Clinton, the first Democratic president in 6 decades to be elected twice, led the U.S. to the longest economic expansion in American history, including the creation of more than 22 million jobs. After leaving the White House, President Clinton established the William J. Clinton Foundation, and today the renamed Bill, Hillary, and Chelsea Clinton Foundation works to improve global health and wellness, increase opportunity for women and girls, reduce childhood obesity, create economic opportunity and growth, and help communities address the effects of climate change. Today, the Foundation has staff and volunteers around the world working to improve lives through several initiatives, including the Clinton Health Access Initiative, which is helping 9.9 million people living with HIV/AIDS access life-changing drugs, the Clinton Climate Initiative, the Clinton Development Initiative, the Clinton Foundation's Haiti team, and the Clinton-Justra Enterprise Partnership are applying a business-oriented approach to promote sustainable economic growth and to fight climate change worldwide and in Africa, Latin America, and Caribbean. In the U.S., the Foundation is working to combat the alarming rise in childhood obesity and preventable disease through the Alliance for a Healthier Generation and the Clinton Health Matters Initiative. Established in 2005, the Clinton Global Initiative brings together global leaders to devise and implement innovative solutions to some of the world's most pressing issues. So far, members of the CGI community have made more than 3,200 commitments, which have improved the lives of over 430 million people in more than 180 countries. In addition to his foundation work, President Clinton has joined with former President George H.W. Bush 3 times after the 2004 tsunami in South Asia, Hurricane Katrina in 2005, and Hurricane Ike in 2008, and with President George W. Bush in Haiti in the aftermath of the 2010 earthquake. Today, the Clinton Foundation supports economic growth, job creation, and sustainability in Haiti. President Clinton was born on August 19, 1946, in Hope, Arkansas. He and his wife, Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, have 1 daughter, Chelsea, and live in Chappaqua, New York. President Clinton was a delegate of Arkansas Boys State in 1963 and was elected as a Boys Nation Senator in that same year. Mr. Cotton, it is my honor and pleasure to introduce for induction into the Arkansas Boys State Hall of Fame, former Boys State delegate, former Arkansas governor, and former President of the United States of America, Mr. William Jefferson Clinton.
Thank you very much, Rusty. Thank you for the welcome. I want to thank Len Cotton for his contributions to Boys State, and we've known each other a very, very long time. Mayor Townsell, County Judge Jim Baker, who was a member of my administration when I was president, and UCA President Tom Courtway, I am delighted to be here. The thing that I always have a culture shock about coming here, when I was governor, I came to Boise State every year. I could never get over the move from Camp Robinson to UCA. We lived in old wooden cabins. We had no air conditioning, and the food was not as good. But it was kind of fun, and I loved doing it. I wanted to say, first of all, congratulations to Boise State on the 75th anniversary. I got my pin here. Believe it or not, in my home in Chappaqua, New York, where I keep my cufflinks, I have my Boise State pin and my Boys Nation pin. I saved them both to the present day. I got a lot out of coming to Boise State, and I hope all of you are enjoying it as well. I want to congratulate the other honorees here, Tom Courtway and Charles Partee, and I want to thank you for recognizing the Boise Staters who have given their lives in the service of our country. One of them was my high school classmate, Mike Thomas, who died in Vietnam trying to save another man who was grievously wounded. And I think it's really important that you are honoring them. I came to Boise State with another person who's been recognized as a distinguished alumnus, Mac McClarty. He was elected governor. We'd gone to kindergarten and first grade together, and then I moved from Hope to Hot Springs, and we stayed in touch our whole lives. He's still one of my closest friends. He was my first chief of staff when I got elected president after a distinguished career in business here in Arkansas. And after he served his term, I had 4 chiefs of staff. It's the hardest job in government, being a president's chief of staff. I asked him to stay on and be my special envoy to all of Latin America, which he did do. And he did so well with that, he now has 12 car dealerships in Sao Paulo, Brazil, along with the family dealership in Hope, Arkansas, which he still has. And we're still friends. So believe it or not, a lot of people here will be your friends in 50 years. And I want to talk a little about what happened to me back then and what the next 50 years will be like for all of you. I guess the short answer is, I don't know. But I do know this. I was never quite the same after I went to Boise State and Boys Nation, after I realized what American government was, what its role in our life was, what citizens were supposed to do to make it work. I never took it for granted again. Before I ran for Boys Nation, I ran for tax collector, party secretary, municipal judge, and county judge. And since we didn't really have to collect taxes, I wasn't as unpopular as I would have been otherwise. I met people that I've stayed in touch with for a very long time. And I understood what was at stake. Then I ran for Boys Nation, and I was very fortunate to be elected. And I got to go to Washington for a week with people from all over the country. And it was a very interesting time in America. President Kennedy was in his last few years, months of life. It was in the summer of 1963. And I remember I was standing with all these other boys in the Rose Garden, and President Kennedy came out, and he complimented us because as we sat as a Senate then, we had just voted for his Civil Rights Bill, which the governors had declined to endorse. So he said that he wanted us to go home and talk to our governors because we were doing better than they were, which in my case, because I was young and arrogant, I thought was probably right about that. It was a fascinating debate. And there were 4 senators from the South only that voted for the Civil Rights Bill. Me, 2 guys from Louisiana, and a guy from Alabama. Those 3 men are still my friends today. The 2 guys from Louisiana I've stayed in very close touch with. And again, it just shows you're looking around at people that I hope you will know 50 years from now. Because as you grow older, I predict that your friends will mean more to you, and things that may seem important today will seem less important. The other day, I went to an event to raise money for an Arkansas foundation called the Thea Foundation that we had at the library. It puts art supplies in schools and helps support people who want to be in the performing and in the visual arts. It was founded by my closest childhood friend after his 17-year-old daughter was killed in a hit-and-run accident. They never found who hit her car. 2,200 of her classmates came to her memorial service in North Little Rock. And I was just thinking about the time we'd spent since we were 9 years old. He went in the military, escaped unharmed during the Vietnam era, and came back and was a good citizen. We've been together all these years. He was raised in a Republican family. I was raised in a Democratic family. We argued over the 1960 election in the our ninth grade English class. We debated. Why am I telling you this? Because in spite of all the young people who have served our country in Afghanistan and Iraq, in spite of the clear stakes for your future, with all the challenges we face, in spite of the programs like Boy State, young people are dramatically less likely to vote than older people. And if you think about it, it ought to be just the reverse, because you have more tomorrows than yesterdays. I have more yesterdays than tomorrows, unless I live to be 138, which with all this genome research, maybe there'll be replacement parts for nearly everything, and some of us will make it, but it seems unlikely. And you're laughing about it, but it's your future, it's your life. So the first thing I want to say is I hope the lesson you will take out of Boy State is that once you become 18, you're just as important as every other person in this country on Election Day. Nobody counts more than you do, and you don't count more than anybody else, unless you don't show up, in which case you don't count and those who show up do. So I hope that one of the things that you will do when you go home and you start school next year is to talk to people about this. What you learned about how it works and why it matters. Because it does. Being a good citizen requires you to obey the law, pay your taxes, do the best you can at work, in education as long as you take it, and if you have a family, to try to do a good job with that. Raising children is still the most important job of any society. But you have to take some time to try to advance the public interest as a private citizen, if you never run for anything again. And if you ask me what I've learned in all these years since I sat where you're sitting, it's pretty simple. If you go into public life, in any job, there's 3 things to me that really matter. Are people better off when you quit than when you started? Do children have a brighter future? And are things coming together instead of being torn apart? If you can answer yes to those 3 questions, everything else is sort of background music. And I think how you do that is really important. The framers of our Constitution had ferocious arguments. They fought and fought and fought. Thomas Jefferson and John Adams didn't even speak for many years. They had such bitter fights when Jefferson denied Adams a second term as president and took over. But as they got older, they realized they'd been dumb, and they started writing each other again. And then in one of the great, almost God-sent accidents of history, Thomas Jefferson at 83 and John Adams at 92 died on the same day, the 4th of July, 1826, on the 50th anniversary of the United States. And that's a symbol of what I think is great about this country. We were set up with the freedom of speech, divided government, designed to guarantee argument. Argument and disagreement's good for a simple reason: nobody's right all the time. But the system also, the Constitution, should have a subtitle that says, "Let's make a deal." Now, some people will tell you that's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. If nobody's right all the time and a system is set up to foster disagreement, the purpose of it is for people to hear each other out and then figure out what is the best available solution that we can all agree on. I saw the other day the Arkansas legislature voted and Governor Hutchinson signed a bill to provide $87 million in benefits to Lockheed Martin if they establish a big expansion of a defense contract in South Arkansas. If I had been a state representative from as far away from Calhoun County as you can get and still be within the state, I would have voted for that. I would have voted for that because Arkansas is in competition with all these other states and with the rest of the world for scarce jobs, because good jobs are short everywhere, and because every manufacturing job creates 2.5 other jobs in supplying them and supporting them and increased consumer power. Doesn't mean I would have been right. Some people thought it was corporate welfare. All I know is if you keep score the way I do, the question is, you have more jobs or fewer? And so I thought it was a good thing. And I noticed that there were people from both parties supporting that. We need to look around the world and you see all these things going on that should disturb you, like the march of ISIS in Iraq and Syria. And almost all the news, especially global news, just by the very nature of it, will be negative, because good news stories are often not considered news. But let me tell you some things that might surprise you. In the same Middle East where all that trouble is going on, the United Arab Emirates has one of the most successful governments in the world and recently replaced Norway as the country given the highest percentage of its income in foreign assistance to other countries to help them eliminate poverty. Saudi Arabia, which still won't let women drive, nevertheless already has more women than men in institutions of higher education. Morocco, which has a king who is a direct descendant of the Prophet Muhammad, just saw that king announce that he was going to personally pay to restore every synagogue in the country. And when a substantial number of Moroccan Jews left to go to Israel to live, his father, who was then the king, told them that their property would be protected forever. No one would ever take it over. No one would appropriate it. And if they ever wanted to come home, they could. That is still the rule today. Why am I telling you this? Because all over the world there are good things and bad things happening. In Africa, you read about this horrible terrorist group, Boko Haram, killing all those people in Nigeria. When the Ebola outbreak happened in Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Guinea, there was one case in Nigeria. You know what happened? They had a good public health system. They went to 19,000 homes in 4 days, and nobody else got Ebola. Infant mortality is down. Deaths from HTB and malaria is down. My daughter went over there about a year and a half ago and started an effort to save young children from dying from dirty water diseases. A bunch of people do, and 80% of them are under 5 years old. They're making real progress there. So everywhere you go where there's bad news, there's good news too. There are people fighting to get what you take for granted. The rule of law, the freedom from violence, the ability to chart your course, and the fact that you're going to be safe after the next election no matter who wins. All this stuff we take for granted, a lot of people can't, but there are good things happening. And you shouldn't take that for granted. You're going to live in a world where, even though we're fortunate to live in the middle of the country, we got plenty of water, we don't have to worry about that drought. In California, a friend of mine from Arkansas called me the other night and said, the government ought to just pay people in California to stop growing fruit and vegetables for a few years and move them all to Arkansas. We got all the topsoil, all the water we need. Now, I doubt they'll agree to do that, but it made a point. No matter where you live, you are never going to be unaffected by things that are going on in other places around the country and around the world. In a world like that, the freedom to choose your leaders and the freedom to express your views on the great issues of the day, that freedom is more important than ever before. 100 years ago, 150 years ago, you didn't vote and your neighbors did. If you had the vote, 100 years ago, neither women or most African Americans had it. But if you had it and you didn't use it, well, what the heck? Most of the issues were local and you could trust your neighbors to do the right thing. Now we're living in a world where so many things affect you, your ability to convince other people your age that they're crazy to leave it to people my age to determine who wins elections that affect your future is really important. So, in closing, I'm honored to be here. One of the reasons I'm here is I was once there. It changed my life. And if you let it, it'll change yours, whether you ever run for anything or not. Secondly, I hope you'll spend the rest of your life cultivating the friendships of the people you met here that you liked and admired. That also changed my life in ways that I can't even begin to describe. I hope you will support the Boy State movement as you get older, and that some of you will replace your leaders here when they age out of their responsibilities. And I hope you will remember that whatever you do in life, being a good citizen, which means both disagreeing and coming together in honorable compromise, is the essence of what makes America work. Everywhere in the world, people are working together across the lines that divide them. Good things are happening. Everywhere in the world, people think they're right 100% of the time, and they just want to fight and beat anybody that disagrees with them. Good things are not happening. The world will belong to the cooperators. So I'll close with this story. It'll give you a kick, I think. One of the things my foundation does now that we never did before, thanks to my daughter and wife, is we organized all 32 organizations around the world that are trying to save the elephants in Africa from extinction from people who are killing them for their ivory. They'd never worked together before, and we are having some real success. They were about to lose all their elephants and all their rhinos, by the way. So they were convinced we could do something about it, and they convinced me. So I just went to an elephant preserve. And it put me in mind of something I read a couple of years ago by a man I admire very much who's almost 90 years old, E.O. Wilson. He won 2 Nobel Prizes, not for peace, in microbiology, mostly writing about ants. He said, if you look at the whole history of life on Earth, the most successful species that have ever lived of all life are ants, termites, bees, and people, because they are the ones that have been most successful in not being wiped out. And the reason is they're the greatest cooperators. And we weren't always the strongest people on this planet or the fastest, but we knew how to work together. And what put me in mind to tell you this story is, on this elephant preserve, in addition to the elephants, I saw 3 ant hills that were about 6 feet high. And one of them had its own shade tree. The ants built an ant hill this tall around a shade tree, all around it, and they stopped right where the leaves started to grow so they wouldn't interfere with the ability of the tree to stay alive. Now, why am I telling you that? They don't have a brain and they don't have a heart. So over many thousands of years, even they learned working together will give them a better result than sitting out in the sun alone and being baked or eaten. America's got the best constitution in the world to give people a chance to do that, to take advantage of the fact that none of us are right all the time, and almost all of us know something that somebody else doesn't know. And all we have to do is our part to make it work. That's really the lesson of Boy State, and one I hope will stay with you for the rest of your life. Thank you very much.